What is up, my fellow Chibits? Like I promised, today I'm here to bring all of you the weekly Tokyo Ghoul chapter review. I promised you I was going to do one for chapter 114, and here I am. It's a little bit later than I wanted it to be. I wanted to get it out, Sunday or Saturday, but today is Tuesday, middle of Tuesday night, so you guys might not see this until Wednesday. However, it's better late than never. I think everybody can agree. And also, I've just, been making other Tokyo Ghoul videos, and I was a little bit busy, so yada yada, little things happen there and there, and so it just overall delayed this video. But I am finally here to sit down and talk about this chapter. Now, I do want to do a couple of clarifications when it comes to this video. Number one, I'm not going to really be talking about the fight, like, the Sato and Kuro versus Almond fight, because as I said in my live reaction, that fight is very, very simple. It's easy, and I don't think I really need to dive into the message of it with these two characters going up against Almond and the connection between them, because I've done it in the past. I think it's very obvious, and everybody can kind of understand that point. So I don't think I really need to dive in panel by panel for the fight and talk about it. So when it comes to this video, majority of this video is going to be about, Mutsuki, the Uta scene, Sasaki, stuff like that. That's kind of the main point of this video, and there's a lot of symbolism here in this first point of the video, and there's some things I need to cover, which I kind of briefly got into when it came to my live reaction, but I want to kind of dive into it a little bit more with this video. So yeah, but before I get into the first page of chapter 114, I want to talk about one thing about the fight that does need clarification that some might not have realized. So let me go over to that page to get it out of the way, because then I want to focus entirely on, the Mutsuki stuff with, Sasuke and Uta and all that. That's the big stuff I really want to talk about. So, page, let's see, yeah, page 17 and 18, okay? So, on the bottom of page 17, the bottom panel, you'll see to where Sato, he, attacks Almond, okay? When he attacks Almond, he inserts his Kagane arm inside of Almond. And right after that, you see, some sound effects, and then, backflow, and then, all of a sudden, Sato's just knocked backwards, and his entire arm is blown off. Now, many didn't understand what this, page, or what was going on here in the fight, and so I want to add some clarification before I get into the big stuff of this video. So, pretty much what happened here from my only understanding, this is my understanding, and right now, you can only kind of theorize what this means. There's not a lot of information to go on here to really say what is going on here, but I'm just going to explain this with the known information we already have when it comes to ghouls, Kagane, and stuff like that. So I'm going to be explaining it because of the stuff we already know prior to this chapter. However, this can have something else to it that might be revealed next chapter, but overall, backflow. So this is a couple of things that many were asking me, what was going on here in this page. I mean, it was very obvious that Sato blew up. There was an explosion, he was not back, and you see how his arm was just eviscerated, completely blown off. Many didn't understand what exactly happened in this panel to cause this, and so I'm here to kind of offer some clarification. So, looking at this page real quick, let's just go, panel by panel. Sato, he attacks Almond in his Kakuja form as he inserts his, arm inside of his right arm in to try to, hurt Almond. All of a sudden, you start seeing some sound effects going on, and you see, something pulsing up through Sato's arm, veins or something, and then right after that, you see, his arm expand, and it explodes, and he flies backwards. Now, what I'm assuming is going on here is some form of chain reaction, which I'm going to bring up right now. Let me pull up the page so I can go to it. Okay, so let's talk about Ukaku ghouls. Now, as we know, Ukaku ghouls, they're ghouls that are kind of like Toka. Toka, the rabbit family, for instance. And they are ghouls that have extremely fast Kagane formation. They can get their Kagane out real quickly, and they can shoot from a distance. They are very long-range type fighters, short to long-range fighters. That's their specialty, and overall, they love to end the fight quickly. They are not good at fighting if the fighting drags on for too long, because they run out of stamina. That is the key weakness of a Ukaku ghoul, is stamina, because they run out of it because they're constantly using their, Kagane, which they're shooting out RC cells, which makes them run out of stamina really quickly. But on top of that, though, we know from the biology of how Kaganes are formed that it's constantly RC cells going through a cycle. They're formed, they die, they reform again. That's how the Kagane keeps coming out of the body through the Kakuho. And because of this, since, Ukaku ghouls, they have a fast Kagane that can form quickly, obviously they're going through the RC cells very quickly, a lot faster than a normal ghoul. On top of that, we have to remember what Sato is doing in this picture. While he is fighting Almond, and he actually, attacks him and he gets his arm inside of Almond's Kaguya, there is an explosion. So what is really happening here? And my only personal understanding from this is think of Almond like a fucking boulder. Almond is a big ass fucking rock, okay? And Almond's literally a tank at this moment. I mean, look at how massive this man is in this chapter. He's a fucking tank. He's a boulder. And what happens when you try to hit a boulder? Well, obviously, you're not going to do much damage at all. It's like hitting a fucking rock. You're going to break your hand on it. And in this case, that's kind of what happened to Sato. But there are going to be a little bit more details here. From my assumption, is that because of Almond having such a high amount of RC cells, we do know when he was fighting in the past, like, a couple chapters ago, like 10 to 15 or so chapters ago, when we thought Almond died, we knew that Almond was at the RC cell level of 10k. We know he had 10k as his RC cell count. And that was at that time. And since then, we do know he has been captured, taken, he's been experimented on and researched, so there's a very likely possibility he has way above 10k RC cells now. It could be 15k, 20k, 100k, I have no idea. But I'm going to assume since his arm is completely fixed now, and as we know when he had 10k, his arm was completely fucked up, still his hand and arm, I'm going to assume he has higher RC cells now of, from what he had in the past when he was fighting Psycho and them in the QS squad. I'm assuming it's a lot higher. So, going up against him like this, he would obviously feel like a fucking boulder, like if you're trying to fight him. But we gotta factor in what type of Kagane Sato is using. So Sato, he has a Kagane that's constantly reforming and quickly coming out of his body. On top of that, when he put his arm inside of Almond to attack him and do damage, you gotta remember his RC cells are trying to flow inside, and they're constantly reforming and then dying, reforming again at a very fast rate. And so, when he was, inside of Almond's, arm attacking him, it caused friction, like a chain reaction. Because of the RC cells constantly forming, it was like it was hitting a boulder and building up fucking friction until it caused a fucking explosion. And that's what happened here. Because of the way Almond's massive amount of RC cells are, it caused the friction to build up, which caused the backflow, which caused Sato to have his entire arm blown off because of the Kagane. There you go. There's your explanation for anyone that didn't understand the backflow of this fight. Hopefully you understand. Hopefully I explained that right. But just imagine, how Flint is. You're getting sparks and all that. You're putting them together, trying to make sparks. That's kind of what was happening here. It was like two forces coming up to each other, and one couldn't be broken, and it was just building up friction because it was inside of Almond as the Kagane was constantly reforming, which caused the explosion and hurt Sato in the process. So there you go. There's a quick summary on that. I don't think I need to dive into any more when it comes to this fight, so I'm going to move on and go back to the first page of chapter 114. Okay, so sorry about that. I'm very sorry. So I wasn't going to get into the fight stuff, but that needed to be clarified, actually. Okay, so the chapter starts off with a flashback. The reason how is because, obviously, Heise Sasaki in this chapter, we know that man is dead as fuck. He was gone. He's just a dream. He doesn't necessarily exist. He never existed. It's something that Kaneki kind of wanted. He wanted a family, but he couldn't have it. And as I've already talked about, the QS symbolize family. That's a big thing about what the QS meant and what Kaneki was. He was kind of like a father figure to the QS, but also all of them were like brother and sister. And so there was a relationship here, a family relationship between all of the characters. And so we get to see how Heise Sasaki met the QS. And you pretty much have Mutsuki meet him. She's giving her overall impressions of how she knows Sasaki. It's like, oh, he's the part-time teacher that was, in the academy. He showed up every so often. And then eventually, Heise Sasaki's like, what you doing? Nice to see you, Mutsuki. Just acted all nice and friendly and stuff. Just acting like a typical, Heise we know from earlier portions of Tokyo Ghoul Re. All of a sudden, you see some time pass. We get a little bit more further into the flashback. Time passes by probably a couple months or so, and you see it to where eventually Mutsuki, she gets up, and you see to where, Kaneki, he's just fixing breakfast kind of like a parent would. Think about it. When you get up in the morning as a child or whatever, usually if you're younger or whatever, your parents are already getting ready for, work or school for you or whatever, and they'll be having your food on the table, probably like, here you go, here's some breakfast for you can go to school and have fun. And that's kind of what, Sasaki was doing. He was making food for all the QS, and he's like, you're the first one up and all that, your breakfast is on the table, you can have it. And Mutsuki was getting that, feeling of like a family, like, he was a father figure. Now, I'll get into what's fucked up about this in a moment, because if you know about Mutsuki's past, you'll realize why this is fucked. So, Sasuke just acting like a traditional father. He's just being a very good example towards the QS and being a good person. Eventually, more time passes, and Mutsuki, she's just, chilling and all that. Sasuke's chilling, he's just sitting down reading stuff, and we do know that's, a big thing when it comes to Kaneki's character. He reads things, reads a lot of dark things, which is one of the big points of the chapter I need to talk about and dive into. Santoka. Santoka, however you pronounce it, please forgive me, but this person is a famous haiku poet. And this person is apparently very famous in Japan. Honestly, I never heard about Santoka until I actually, looked him up and started researching him and stuff earlier today, because I was really unaware of who this was, besides what was said here in the translation notes. So I went in, dived into this character, and I was figuring out, okay, so what's going on here? Because usually when Ishida mentions like a famous book or something, we know for a fact it's going to have some importance to Tokyo Ghoul. It's going to have some meaning, symbolism for the chapter or for the series. And judging by how controversial this chapter is, how kind of messed up it is, obviously there's going to be some meaning here. So after researching for hours today, I first went to the wiki page of Santoka Taneda? Santoka Taneda. Hopefully that's how you pronounce it. So I went to his, wiki page. I'll have it linked in the description if you want to see it for yourself. I read through pretty much everything. I came to the conclusion from reading all this that Santoka is actually a pen name. He actually had a pen name, and it's really interesting when you realize that he actually changed his name and hid his name when he was writing his haiku poems. And so it's very similar to how Ishida is as a writer. As we know, Ishida Sui, that's not, Ishida's real name. Ishida's real name is a mystery. We don't know gender or whatever. Ishida's a mystery. And also Taneda, Santoka, the haiku poet, also had a pen name and wouldn't share the real name for a good long while until eventually it was discovered, but overall a pen name to hide his true identity. And then, looking more into it, from what you can understand from his childhood and throughout his entire life story, there is a lot of connections to different themes of Tokyo Ghoul and like things that are going on with this chapter, but also the entirety of Tokyo Ghoul in general. So let's talk about Santoka the poet's life, okay? So apparently he was born in Japan, okay? That's common sense because he's a famous haiku poet, but when he was 11, apparently his mother committed suicide by throwing herself into a family well. Now that's rather dark to start off with his life story. That's like one of the earliest things apparently to his, bio, was when he was 11 years old, his mother committed suicide and threw herself into the family well. Now, at a young age, a boy his age, this poet, that's gonna be very fucking scarring, very mentally scarring, and when I see this, okay, I instantly start thinking, I could see what Ishida is doing here. Obviously, when Ishida does a connection to something, he loves having connections with certain themes with his series. And in this case, I feel like the mother committing suicide, or in this case dying, would be very similar to what has happened to Kaneki and Mutsuki. As we know, Kaneki's mother died from exhaustion, or in a lot of cases, there's a lot of examples now with the parallels of Mutsuki, that it's very likely that Kaneki did kill his mother, or some way he might have killed her, because we can't trust Kaneki's memories at all. Kaneki's narrative is something we cannot trust before he actually became to terms with himself and he reawakened to what he truly is right now. We cannot trust the previous flashbacks we have of Kaneki, because that could be falsified. We don't even know if that's true or not, because after the image we saw when he got abused by his mother. So we don't know what is necessarily true and not true of Kaneki's past. However, we do know his mother died, and apparently the theme here is that, the mother committed suicide from Santoka, his life. His mother committed suicide when he was only 11, and it was the actual direct cause and the change, and so as Santoka's person, because he didn't actually ever want to have a woman or have a wife or anything. He didn't really care about having one because of seeing his mother's corpse, dead corpse, being brought out of the well. That kind of ruined his any chance of wanting to have a relationship with a woman, is because what he saw when his mother's corpse was dragged out of the well. That's what's even stated in here in this wiki. So I'm like, oh shit, so this, person, Santoka, never wanted a wife, and he was eventually forced to have a wife. by his father and family and all that, but overall, though, he didn't want one because of his mother, which is very similar to the theme with Mutsuki. Let's think about what's going on with Mutsuki throughout the series. Mutsuki said that she didn't really care about men. She didn't want to be with men because she hated them, which is very obvious because one of her main interactions with a man was obviously her father, which we know from Mutsuki's past, her father was very abusive, left a lot of scars on Mutsuki. When you see later on in the chapter when Mutsuki is, raping Uto or a dead corpse or whatever, we know that Mutsuki had a lot of scars on her back. You saw it. You saw all the scars all over her body and all that, which shows the abuse she had at a young age. But then, to go even further past that, we do know that the father gave a glance at Mutsuki, which hints that he did indeed sleep with Mutsuki. The father was fucked up. He actually slept with his own daughter, which that's really fucked, which would explain why she would not want any interaction with a man. And then here comes Torso. He comes around, he does all these evil things to her, and eventually Mutsuki just breaks, has a mental breakdown, and then kills Torso, which that's something I'll talk about in a minute. But overall, though, we do know that Mutsuki didn't like men because of her father. And this is very similar to what we see. This a little bit different, but overall, the reason why Santoka never wanted to have a wife was because of how his mother died. And so, once again, being, I guess, ruined as a child. Like, his childhood was kind of ruined, so it kind of changed his perspective on a certain gender, for instance, male or female. And that's kind of what happened to Mutsuki as well. So, another very similar theme going on with this famous poet and Mutsuki. Now, going even further into this man's life, apparently he had a lot of nervous breakdowns, where he would just, have a nervous breakdown, and it'd be possibly the result of severe drunkenness. So the man was a drunk. He was constantly drinking or whatever, probably because he was lonely and sad, which is revealed in his, haiku poems. But overall, though, he did have constant nervous breakdowns, which is something we've also seen from Tokyo Ghoul. We've seen characters have nervous breakdowns, or they just completely black out, which we've seen in Mutsuki's case. She blacks out completely and just goes fucking crazy. We've seen this from Mutsuki. Look what she did with Torso. She blacked out, killed the man, and that's kind of what she possibly did with her family as well. She blacked out, and then that's what she did to Torso, and then eventually her family. So, big point here is that this man, having severe drunkenness, he was a very lonely individual, which once again, another correlation with Tokyo Ghoul. Now, after that continued on, eventually we find out that he had a son. Santoka had a son, and this is probably one of the most fascinating parts about it, about his entire backstory, is that apparently his son was named Kin. It's only mentioned once in this wiki, and I was looking up all over the web, and I couldn't really find out any more information besides what I got here, but apparently Santoka had a son called Kin. Now, obviously, you're going to understand the connection. Kaneki Kin. Obviously, connection there, so the name is very similar. So when you think about it like this, maybe we're finding the reason why, Kaneki has his name with Kin. Why Ishida chose that name, Kin, because of this poem, this haiku poet. So, when you think about it like that, it's like crazy, like, holy crap. So, this man had a son named Kin. And so, as we know, since he didn't want a wife, and eventually he actually divorces his wife, you could kind of say he probably never wanted his son either. That's what you could assume. Now, I'm not saying that's what he thought, because it's not stated here, but you could assume because he never wanted a woman. He wanted to divorce his wife. So, I mean, he might not have wanted his son to begin with, which eventually means he might not have wanted kin. And let's think about the, the possibility of what's going on here in Tokyo Ghoul. As we know, we don't really know much about, Kaneki Kin's father. We don't. We really know next to nothing when it comes to Kaneki's father. We only have slight few details overall, but nothing. We don't even know what he looks like. We have no idea what Kaneki's father looks like. We've only heard bits and pieces. And because of this, I wonder if Ishida's trying to say, like, the relationship that most likely Santoka felt towards his son or his wife might play a part with how Kin's family was. As we know, Kin was raised by his mother overall, and she was, apparently separated, and so because of this, we know he didn't grow up with a father. This might mean that maybe Kin's father never wanted him or something. Who knows? I mean, there's little details here and there, and as I said, when it comes to Kaneki's narrative, we don't know, because we can't trust it, because he was constantly lying to himself, so us as the audience never got to see the truth of what was really going on in his mind. So, who knows? Maybe Ishida's trying to hint at maybe Kaneki's father never wanted him. Who knows? So, after that, let's just talk about some of his, poems, you know, his haiku poems. So I'm going to read this one real quick, and I want to kind of go over the life story of Santoka. So apparently, this man that had a really great intellect, he was a very smart individual, and he could actually move up in the world and probably get a very decent job. Somehow, he never got to accomplish that because of how he was a drunkard, but also how, you know, just his family was and how he viewed the world. Eventually, he resulted in becoming a poet, but also someone that would actually become like a monk or a beggar monk. He would go from door to door to beg for, you know, a food or whatever, food, water. And throughout his journey, he was very lonely. He went for years by himself with no company at all. And a lot of his, you know, haiku poems are very, very sad. It just shows his journey of loneliness. Like, here, let me read this one. The title of it is, If I Sell My Rags. And this is, you know, the haiku poem. If I sell my rags and buy some sake, will there still be loneliness? It's pretty sad when you think about it. That's what he said. So pretty much he was constantly in rags. He was someone that didn't really have any clothes, and there's a constant amount of haiku poems to where he talks about how his clothes are, you know, tattered, they're worn, and they're just not in good condition anymore. And he even goes through certain, you know, poems where he states like he's in the rain all alone, and he writes this, and he, you know, his entire food or whatever he has is completely soaked, which shows he didn't have a home. He was homeless for a long time, and so as he journeyed being homeless and lonely, having to beg from door to door for food, he would write these certain, you know, poems, and that's what we have here in his legacy. So looking at his life, he was a very, very lonely man, and it makes you sad, because a lot of the things from his poems actually play a part in Tokyo Ghoul. A lot of the themes from his poems are in Tokyo Ghoul. And so I feel like what's going on here is Ishida didn't just necessarily use Santoka, the poet, as just for this chapter, but he's actually used some of the big things about his person as themes throughout the entirety of the series, which is something I really love about Ishida Sui and how Ishida writes his manga series, because he can always throw in such good meaning to individual scenes or just keep that message across of what he actually meant about his series. Now, one last thing I do want to mention when it comes to Santoka, though, is that pretty much a lot of people in early stages of Japan, like a long time ago, early 1900s, they did not like Santoka at all. They did not like him because of his freestyle haiku poems. Because of the way he was freestyle, they didn't appreciate it or like it. They thought he was informal, someone that was just, you know, that was bad. Like, there was something disgusting about him. A lot of people really disgusted how he operated because of his choice of lifestyle, but also how he raised his kid, his wife, and also his job, you know, doing what he was doing. And then on top of that, being a beggar, many didn't really like the way he was as a person. And when you look at it like this, the message here from Ishida might be saying this: what's happening in this chapter may be inappropriate for some. It may have a lot of things that could be controversial, but it needs to be done. And maybe one day after many years pass, people look back at this, you know, chapter or this series and realize that stuff like this will eventually may get accepted in society as, you know, a form of literature. And that's kind of what happened here. In the past, poor Santoka, he was discredited and all that because nobody cared about his haiku poems, and he's very famous to this day. Now he's famous, but in the past, many people didn't like him. They didn't like him because of his lifestyle and how he did freestyle haiku. And so seeing this, it makes you sad too that this is exactly what's going on with the latest chapter of Tokyo Ghoul. I feel like Shida's very aware of what is going on in the community and stuff. He knew people would react like they're doing, you know, looking at the video I made earlier today. And I feel like the way this was thrown in was subtle symbolism for how people might react or view him right now, but maybe one day they might view him in a different light and show that, holy shit, you know, this is some really good writing, and a lot of people will come to respect him. The people that once made fun of him will eventually come around and say, oh, you know, he actually was good. Maybe that's something that Ishida's trying to hint at with this chapter, who knows, but yeah. Anyways, moving on to the next segment of, you know, this chapter review. So, we go to Cafe Ri, and with Cafe Ri, we see Sasaki meet Toka. And this is actually something we've already seen in the earlier portions of Tokyo Ghoul Ri. Go back to the earlier chapters if you want to see it. It's when, you know, he cried. It was a big chapter. It was when Toka first popped up in Tokyo Ghoul Ri. It was like her first appearance. This was shown before. And also, there was a lot of like a subtle message from Mutsuki that she was very uncomfortable with Sasaki and Toka's meeting. There was something off with her. Like, she, grabbed her clothes and all that, and seemed like there was something off with her. And it wasn't really dived into after that. It was just something very subtle that Ishida had in the background. And as we know, Ishida is good with this. He's done it for a very long time throughout his series of Tokyo Ghoul. And we get to see from a different perspective, from Mutsuki's perspective, of how this really affected her. And because of Sasaki crying after seeing Toka, Mutsuki got very, 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 very jealous. You see to where in her mind, as she's just laying in her bed, later that day, she's laying in her bed just looking up, thinking about things, and her mind just drifts off to that scene with Toka and Kaneki, and she just crosses out Toka, completely crosses her out. You just see these marks all over, which shows, like, get the fuck out of his life. That's kind of what it looks like. It looks like jealousy and anger, and you see to where Toka, she puts her hand on, her chest. She's grabbing and all that, and she feels something, which shows that she's getting very upset with this scene. So, automatically, we see that she's starting to develop feelings at this point. At that moment, she was starting to come to realization she does care about her senpai, Heisei Sasaki, quite a bit. So, after that, we get another flashback, which continues what we've been going through. And this scene, I'm going to assume where this takes place is after the actual island, after Rue Island. I'm assuming this is where this flashback takes place. Because you remember when Saiko was talking to Mutsuki, and then Saiko was like, you smell like blood or whatever, and she walked off? You remember Mutsuki walked off and all that? I'm going to assume that this scene going on right here is right before the Saiko scene when she talks to Mutsuki, because Mutsuki's covered in blood and all that, and you see right here to where she's up against a tree, which is very similar. It's like straight up similar to what happened with Torso and Mutsuki, when Mutsuki revealed her past and all that, and how we found out that she actually was killing cats and little small animals. We do know she's killed dogs as well, because previous, flashbacks or little details throughout, Tokyo Ghoul Re, she has mentioned animals, which we assume they've also been killed. She's talked about dogs before, she's talked about cats, so Mutsuki has killed a lot of animals throughout Tokyo Ghoul Re. It's a consistent thing that has been going on for a very long time, and it has not stopped. And she overall thinks it's probably completely normal, and really hasn't questioned at all, because the way she reacts throughout the entirety of this series. So in this scene, I'm assuming she's killing some form of small animal and putting it in a jar, which I've talked about in my live reaction. And because of this is probably the scene right before Saiko, when Saiko says, you smell like blood. Here you go. Now, there is another possibility that this could be a person that was killed too. Who knows? I mean, Mutsuki is a psychopath, so there is a likely possibility that that could be a person too, that you see blood all over her. Who knows? Anyways, while she is doing this fucked up, despicable act, she starts thinking about her sensei, her senpai, which is Heisei Sasaki. So to make matters even more disturbing, while she is just playing with dead body parts, okay, just body parts of a dead person or dead animal or whatever, she's saying in her mind, I love him, I love him, I love him, I love sensei, this warm tightness I'm feeling in my chest, I love him, this is love, which that is just so fucked. It is so fucked, because just think about how disturbing it is. Someone killing something or holding dead body parts and shit, and then thinking in their mind, like, I love him and all that. And she's not thinking about how disturbing this is. She's just thinking about, like, I love him. So this, what she's doing, messing with dead body parts, that's normal. There's no problem with that. There's nothing off with that. That does not bug her. It doesn't even come into her mind to think there's something wrong with that. She just starts talking about love. That just shows how warped Mutsuki's mind is, to not even factor in and talk about what's going on probably in her hands with the blood and the knife and all that. She's just thinking about her love towards her sensei while she already took something else's life. That automatically just screams, whoa, you messed up. So, next page, we move over to present time. In present time, we get to see Mutsuki on top of Uta. Now, for some reason, there was quite a few that did not understand that what we were seeing here was actually present time, and the, Heisei Sasaki we're seeing is actually Uta's face changed. Now, I want to be completely honest here. I do not think this is honestly Uta. I don't. You want to know why I don't think it's Uta? Because number one, I just do not think Uta as a character would allow this. I don't. And that's just my personal reason. I know Uta likes fucking with people. Like, I know this man loves getting under the skin and messing with them. He's shown it time and time again throughout Tokyo Ghoul Re. I mean, he did it to Mutsuki earlier on in the auction arc. You know, he was messing with a couple of people. He transformed into Arima one time. I mean, we see how he's messing with Suzuya, but now he is messing with Mutsuki once again. We do know that Uta does probably enjoy getting under people's skin and just messing with them. That's part of his character. However, I do not think this is Uta, because number one reason, actually there's two reasons why. Number one, since Uta is capable of changing his face, and he's able to change the hairstyle and everything, I'm going to assume Uta is capable of actually making a full detachable Kagane, like a body similar to Donato. Maybe not as good as Donato, who knows. However, I do believe he's capable of making a detachable Kagane. For a man to be able to mess around with Suzuya like it's fucking nothing, when Suzuya is supposedly the new Arima of the CCG, there's just no way the man is weak. There's just no way that, you know, Uta is a weak individual. I mean, there's been a lot of theories about him and all that. There's just no way he's weak. On top of that, we know he has to have a Kakuja. We do know that. So if he's capable of a Kakuja and all that, we know he has to have a high RC cell level. So that would mean that there is a likely possibility he could have a detachable Kagane. We do know he has the imagination to be able to make masks or faces of different people. So he does have a very active imagination. And because of this, I'm going to assume he can make a detachable Kagane looking like a person. Now, I'm going to assume this right here is not really, you know, Uta's body. This is actually a detachable Kagane, or it could be something else, which many might be overlooking and not thinking too much about. Think about what's been going on in this arc of Tokyo Ghoul. Think about what the clowns have been doing, and what Furuta's been supporting or being happy with. Obviously, a lot of the people, or a lot of the clowns that have been dying are actually just humans. Innocent people that have their mouths stitched up, and they're being forced to die against their will, and then CCG is killing them, so they're pretty much human versus human violence. That's what's going on in the latest chapters of Tokyo Ghoul. They're not even really killing ghouls. There's a few ghouls mixed in, but overall, it's human versus human, and the humans that are getting killed, obviously they don't want to get killed. They're just being forced against their will. Mouths are stitched up, whatever, but it's not really clarified how they're being forced, but we do know that their mouths are stitched up and they can't really say anything. So, what's to say what we're seeing here might not be another example of that? Hear me out. Number one, we do know that Kagane are capable of talking. We've seen it from Kaneki, Eto, and we've also seen it from what we can assume is Donato's, you know, clone or whatever. So, as we do know, Kagane can actually have speech. They can talk. And because of this, we do know that Uta can also do the same thing. We're seeing the man changing his voice to sound like Sasaki, and so because of this, you do know he also has that ability. So what's to say he doesn't have a detachable Kagane maybe on a person, and he actually has their mouth stitched up or whatever, he's holding their mouth still or whatever, and he's actually just has their face changed, and, you know, it's just, you know, Kaneki. It looks like Kaneki in general, but it's actually just an innocent person that's a regular human getting raped by Mutsuki. What's to say that's not a thing? And if that is a real person, like a person that's not Uta or detachable Kagane, that would mean that Mutsuki just committed a murder and then raped this person. That is fucked. That is really fucked. Yes, it's fucked even raping a detachable Kagane or Uta, but if this is a regular person, just imagine the ramifications of this scene. That's gonna be bad. That is very bad. That is really, really, really bad. So I feel like one of the two are going on. Since Uta loves fucking with people, getting under their skin, I could see this man having a regular person that's innocent being raped by Mutsuki, but just with, you know, Sasuke's face on. Or it's a detachable Kagane. One or the other. So, that's my theory on that. Anyways, let's talk about how fucked Mutsuki is, okay? So she straight up confesses her feelings to this image of her sensei, which she automatically knows this is, I'm assuming, fake, but no matter what, she doesn't care. She goes as far as to cut fucking this fake Sasuke's throat, like just straight up with a knife, and then once that was done, she starts tearing apart the face. And she says, like, please do not leave me. Don't leave. I like it when you're here or whatever. I don't want you to ever leave. And without you, I'm pretty much assuming she's crazy. And she just starts stabbing this fake face over and over again, repeatedly, just making it to where you can no longer recognize the face. And the next image is just so scarring because soon as she does this, she's like, I love you, sensei. I love you. She's announcing her feelings towards Sasuke to this dead body. And that, holy shit. And the face that she is announcing her love to, but she gets up and, like, cradles, like, hugging the person, like, into the sweet embrace of a chest or whatever, you just see the man's face just completely ruined. It's just completely fucking ruined. The jaw is gone. The face is so fucked up. Like, honestly, if I didn't know that this was Sasuke's face or a fake Sasuke face before this panel, I wouldn't really recognize it. I wouldn't, because that's just how fucked up the face is. And as Mutsuki's just, like, all done, you're perfect now, whatever, I'm almost embarrassingly female. So Mutsuki pretty much admits that she is female, and she has this female, or this, you know, actual love towards Sasuke, and she does think of herself like a girl, while she actually is viewing Sasuke like a man. So it's like the first man she's really fallen in love with. Now, let's talk about how fucked up this scene is, okay? So she is Mutsuki straight up having sex with Uta's body, or Uta's detachable cognate, or a random innocent civilian that's being forced against his will. Regardless, though, Mutsuki's having sex right now, okay? And this is what has everybody fucking triggered on certain sections of, you know, the internet. But regardless of that, though, Mutsuki is having sex with a body. This person against her will. If they're dead or alive, it doesn't matter. She's still having sex with him. And we gotta recognize how Mutsuki views Sasuke. She views Sasuke as, like, a sensei or a father figure. And let's remember what happened earlier on in her childhood, and what I've already talked about in this video. As we do know, her father gave her a look to where it looked like he wanted to take his daughter and have sex with her. And then we do know eventually he was killed. He was killed by Mutsuki, and the entire family was killed by Mutsuki. So this scene, I feel like, represents what happened Mutsuki in the past. Remember, Mutsuki was raped by her father, and the only real probably touch she's had by a man and like that would probably be by her father or torso. And so it's kind of fucked up that she has fallen in love with Sasuke because he was like a father figure, which connects with how she felt about her father, or what her father did to him, or, you know, her. So I was like, oh shit. So yeah, there's definitely a correlation right there between those two aspects of Mutsuki's life. How she views Sasuke as a father figure, and how her father raped her. So, yeah. It's like swapped roles, if you think about it. Anyways, Aura, he's seen this. He's now looking at this, so, that man probably dead. Aura's probably dead. If Aura doesn't die, he's probably just gonna turn around and act like he didn't see anything. One or the other is gonna happen, because I mean, what are you supposed to do in this scene? Like, I mean, if you walk up to someone straight up having sex with a dead body, and their face is all ruined, like, what are you gonna do? Like, what are you gonna do? You know, like, how would you react to that? So, poor Aura, now, I feel like he's going to die. I truly believe this man is probably going to die. And if he doesn't die, he's gonna, you know, carry Mutsuki's secret with him to the grave, or, you know, he's just gonna run off and he didn't see shit. He's gonna act like he didn't see shit. One or the other is gonna happen, but something bad's gonna happen to Aura. Something very bad's gonna happen to this dude. He's probably going to die. That's my assumption, because of how Mutsuki is so fucked up at this moment. And yeah. Anyways, I feel like this chapter, it was a really good chapter. I know there's a lot of triggered people out there, which, you know what I say? Be fucking triggered, okay? Go ahead and be fucking triggered if you fucking have a problem. Mutsuki having sex with, you know, Uta, detachable cognate, or even a dead corpse. Yes, it's fucked up. Don't get me wrong. It's fucked up. Oh, yes, it is. But this shows Mutsuki's personality. We already know, it's been pre-established that Mutsuki has been fucked up in the head for a long time. Killing animals, her father raping her, killing her family, denying killing her family. Now this, I mean, it's all been there since the start that Mutsuki is fucking insane. So you can't say it came out of nowhere, and honestly, this chapter serves for a lot of, I guess you could say, fucked up, twisted character development and characterization, because number one, it clarifies that Mutsuki does view herself as a female now, because I'm almost embarrassingly female, right there. On top of that, you know, she admits that she loves Sasuke, which shows the way she reacted constantly towards Sasuke, and we now know her true thoughts of how she felt about, you know, Heise Sasuke leaving the QS squad. She was very angry and upset, even though she hid it behind, you know, a false mask. She did really care and was upset that Sasuke left, and he, you know, became, you know, a renegade and all that. So now we do know that because of this, the true thoughts of Mutsuki and how she feels. So yeah. Anyways, chapter. I like it. I really like the chapter. And I'm willing to bet you right now, Ishida's probably laughing his ass off right now. Like, he's really laughing his ass off because of just, you know, probably how some people are reacting to this. We know Ishida has no chill and all that, and I'm willing to bet you right now, Ishida's probably just sitting back, looking at all the reactions of the triggered fans and being like, I caused that. And he's just smiling and laughing or whatever. Or she is smiling and laughing, because we don't know what gender, you know, Ishida is, technically, because it's never been revealed. Anyways, though, I really, really enjoyed this chapter. Good shit on you, Ishida. Good shit on you. This was, I think, the first time we've actually seen sex in TG. I think it is. I mean, there's been hints and stuff at sex, like, you know, as we do know that Mutsuki's been raped by her father, and other little instances here and there, Kaneki and all that. But, I mean, overall, though, this is the first time we've actually seen in panel that it wasn't just implied, it was happening in the manga chapter. Because you see the squiggly lines there, Mutsuki's obviously shaking her fucking hips on a dead body's, you know, dick, so, yeah. Oh yeah, someone brought up something very interesting in the comments, actually, which, I don't know if Ishida's gonna go that far or not, which would be very fucked if he did, but someone stated, what if somehow Mutsuki gets pregnant from this? I mean, technically the body's fresh, so when you think about it, I mean, if she gets, you know, semen or cum inside her, I guess you could say she could possibly get pregnant. I mean, if it is a person, or, you know, I don't know if detachable cognate could, I don't know, but still, there's a likely possibility that maybe she could get pregnant from this. Who fucking knows? So, I don't know if Ishida will go that far or not. I don't know. I really have no idea, but that is something that he could do because of this, because obviously it's unprotected sex going on here. I don't think she would just bring fucking condoms with her, so yeah. Just wanted to point that out, and that was mentioned to me. I didn't come up with that. That was actually a couple of you Chibits mentioning that in the live reaction, so who knows? I mean, possibility. Anyways, you all have a wonderful day or night wherever you live. Please be safe. Chibi out.